Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this event is for women only. If you're a man, please feel free to watch your exclusive and free session. Also, please allow yourself a full hour for this dedicated event. To make things more convenient, we'll have a 7-minute intermission during which you can grab a coffee, have a snack, visit the restroom, or receive your home delivery meal. Hopefully, the person delivering it hasn't been waiting too long at your door while you've been tuning in. And if they have, well, thank goodness for microwave ovens and modern technology. Now welcome, ladies, to the first of 6 lessons in the transformative program Awaken His Passion by Ernie Sulovic of Everlast Therapies. Ernie is a relationship trainer and therapist who truly practices what he teaches. Today he has generously granted us exclusive free access to Lesson 1 of his program. This collaboration was created to offer you the opportunity to embark on an enlightening journey that will help you to always have your man be hopelessly, madly, and passionately in love with you. As we delve into the essence of romance, how to bring love, fun, communication, intimacy, and unwavering passion to the man you love, you'll discover the ultimate goal, not only to find love, yet to keep it alive, preventing divorce and nurturing a harmonious family unit. It's no secret that many couples struggle with challenges that can turn love into routine and passion into indifference. Arguments about money, differing family values, raising children, and communication breakdowns can leave relationships feeling stagnant and strained. However, as we'll explore together today, it isn't merely the circumstances of your relationship that dictate its quality. It's how you perceive and respond to those circumstances that truly matters. Our insights in this program are not just theoretical. They are the result of extensive research involving thousands of happily married couples who have successfully navigated the trials of love. Their stories are not only inspiring but grounded in reality. They may strike a chord within you, invoking memories and emotions that you once thought were buried. Allow yourself to feel, for passion thrives in vulnerability and honesty. Some may find themselves resistant to the information presented in this program, perhaps due to past experiences or preconceived notions about relationships. Yet here's the truth. This is not just theory. It's a blueprint for success. You have the opportunity to learn from those who have thrived in love, to emulate their patterns of behavior and choices. After all, if you aim to create a successful relationship, why not model it after those who have achieved it? Let's take a moment to reflect on a common mistake many people make. Seeking relationship advice from friends or family who may not have the best track record in love and commitment. If you turn to a friend who is bitter after a painful divorce, you might find yourself receiving a skewed perspective, one that breeds distrust and negativity, rather than understanding and fulfillment. Instead, let's focus on building a network of positivity, love, and mutual respect. Throughout this session, I encourage you to remain open and engaged, for what lies ahead is not just advice. It's a path illuminated by the voices of those who have walked it before you. And if you stay with us until the end, prepare to be rewarded with some special bonuses that will further enhance your journey towards rekindling passion and understanding in your relationship. Let's begin this exciting adventure together, and remember, transforming your relationship starts with you. It's time to awaken his passion, and in doing so, awaken your own.
Welcome to Awaken His Passion, a program designed to show you how to keep love, romance, excitement, and communication in a relationship. After listening to this program, you will know how to keep passion alive and understand why some men are hopelessly and madly in love with one woman and not another, why one woman gets lots of marriage proposals and others can't seem to keep a man's interest. I'd like to start out with a quote by Ruth Stanford Peele, and it says, "No job, no hobby, no activity on earth can compare with the drama and the exhilarating experience of living with a man and loving him, doing your best to understand his infinitely complex mechanism and helping to make it hum and sing and soar the way it was designed to do." Now, some of you listening to this quote would say, "You've got to be kidding." Yet, hopefully by the end of this program, you will absolutely agree with this quote. Let me read you something called a tunnel without cheese. And if you could just picture a little rat, it's going to help you. It says, if you put a rat in front of a bunch of tunnels and you put cheese in one of them, the rat will go up and down the tunnels looking for the cheese. Now, if every time you do the experiments you put the cheese down the fourth tunnel, eventually you're going to get a successful rat. The rat knows the right tunnel and goes directly to it every time. Now, if you move the cheese out of the fourth tunnel and you put it at the end of another tunnel, the rat still goes down the fourth tunnel, and of course, he gets no cheese. Now, he comes out of the tunnel, looks the tunnel over, goes right back down the fourth cheeseless tunnel, unrewarded. He comes out of the tunnel, looks the tunnels over again, and goes back down that fourth tunnel again and again, but finds no cheese. Now, the difference between a rat and a human being is eventually the rat will stop going down that fourth tunnel and will look down the other tunnels, and a human being will go down the tunnel with no cheese forever. Rats, you see, are only interested in cheese. Yet, human beings care about going down that right tunnel. It is belief which allows human beings to go down that fourth tunnel ad nauseum. They go on doing what they do without any real satisfaction, without any nurturing, because they come to believe that what they're doing is right, and they're going to do this forever, even if there's no cheese in the tunnel, as long as they believe in it and can prove that they're in the right tunnel. Now, the purpose of this course is to get you out of that fourth cheeseless tunnel. And some of you are in that fourth cheeseless tunnel. If you aren't getting all you had hoped for out of life, if you're not getting all the rewards, then maybe you're in the wrong tunnel. Now, if you were a child, it would be the easiest thing in the world to yank you out of that fourth tunnel, because kids have something called blind faith and trust. They do whatever you ask them to do, yet adults cling to old habits. In this program, I'm going to ask you to do things and to say things that might make you uncomfortable. I want you to do it anyway. I want you to do what I ask you to do, experience it, and then evaluate it. So many people never try to do anything new or say anything that feels uncomfortable, because they evaluate an outcome or reaction in their head without ever experiencing it in reality. For instance, at the end of this lesson, I'm going to ask you to say something to your partner. Now, when you hear what it is, you might think, if I said that, he would die laughing, or if I said that, he'd think I lost my mind. Neither of those will be his reaction, yet you're never going to experience how he reacts if you don't say what I'm asking you to say. Those of you that are not in a relationship, I'm going to ask you to do something that you have probably never done before. At the end of this lesson, when you hear what it is, just do it and then evaluate it. Just realize that this is an expensive program and say to yourself, look, I might as well give it my best shot and do what he asked me to do. Once I get you to come out of that fourth tunnel and explore new avenues of behavior, I know that when you get rewarded for your new behavior, that'll be enough for you to never go back down that fourth cheeseless tunnel again. I've got to be able to yank you out of that tunnel. One of the things that I feel so strongly about is most of us don't know that we're on automatic. We don't even realize that what we're doing is reacting the way our mothers reacted to our fathers, the way our grandmothers reacted to our grandfathers. Everybody copies the prior generation. What I'd like you to do while listening to this program is really think about what I'm saying and maybe change those old lessons in your head, which have your mother's and your father's voice on them, and replace them with some new lessons, which have my voice on them. My favorite story is the Easter Sunday ham story that some of you might have heard before. It's about a little girl that goes over to her mum and says, "Mum, why is it that every single Easter Sunday you bake a ham and then you cut both ends of that ham?" And the mother says, "I have no idea. Grandma used to do that, and so I just do it." And she said, "Yet, you know what? Grandma's in this room. Let's go over and ask her." So, both go over and ask Grandma, "Why do you always take a ham and cut both ends off every time we have a big Easter Sunday dinner?" And Grandma looks at them and says, "I've never thought about it. My mother used to do it. Yet, look, Great-Grandma's sitting in this room, so why don't we go find out?" Well, they all march over to Great-Grandma and ask the same question. And Great-Grandma looks at them and says, "Because I never had a pan big enough to fit that big old ham." So you see, 3 generations later, they are still cutting off both ends of the ham without questioning it. What I want you to do is to stop reacting to the men in your life, the way your mother reacted and the way your grandmother reacted. I want you to have your own reaction. So I'm going to help you replace your old automatic lessons with new thinking lessons. My wife and I know a couple from India. They are a result of an arranged marriage, and their love for each other is stronger than probably any couple that I know. And again, look, this was arranged in the beginning, so they had no say in who their partner was. Yet, they look at love as an ongoing process. The way they view love is different than the way we do. The husband said, "We don't even look at ourselves as human beings because human beings implies stagnation. We think of ourselves as human becomings. It's an ongoing process, always learning, always growing, and always increasing our love for one another as we get to know each other." Isn't that beautiful? That is something I have never forgotten. So first, in this course, we are going to take responsibility for our happiness. When we focus on ourselves for improvement, we build better relationships with others. I don't believe in luck, and I don't believe in chance. Actually, 2 things are possible. Either you take responsibility for your life, or somebody else is going to take control. Whether it's a father, a mother, a loved one, a neighbor, if you give up control over your life and your happiness, then someone else will step in and say, "Oh, you don't want control of your life? Let me do it." And no matter what happens to you, you're better off being in control of what goes on in your life. Next, it is not up to us to improve other people's behavior. It is our responsibility to improve ourselves. I don't believe that change ever occurs as a response to a demand. You can't force somebody to change. Every one of you listening to this program is going to see the man in your life respond to the changes in you. The example I like to give is that there was a woman in my class many years ago whose husband every single Friday night came home drunk. Every Wednesday night, a fight began because she knew exactly what was going to happen on Friday night. Yet, one particular Friday night, she changed her behavior, and what she said to him was, "Honey, I know you work so hard all week, and you really do deserve a night out with the boys. And I want you to have a good time, and in fact, this time, I'm going to wait for you, and I'll have a snack waiting." He looked at her and he said, "Don't wait up for me and don't have a snack waiting. I don't know what time I'm coming home." And he slammed the door and out he went. Now I know that his reaction was automatic. He was reacting the way he had for years. Yet when he thought about it, and I don't really care why, doesn't matter to me that he felt guilty or whatever else he was feeling, when he got in the car, he must have said to himself, "That was really something nice she said to me. I really didn't have to snap at her that way." I want you to know that was the first time in 25 years that the man came home and he had only 2 drinks and he was not drunk. So this couple started to experience a change in their relationship. Yet, I want you to understand that the change happened because she started to change, and then he reacted to the change in her. She didn't demand a change from him. The only one you have control over is yourself. There are always 2 ways of looking at everything. We can take any given situation and try to examine it from a different point of view. For example, a person might complain about somebody else monopolizing class time, or they can look at themselves and say, "I get so upset because I find it so hard to share some things I would like to." Have you ever read the Ladies' Home Journal? I like the column called, "Can This Marriage Be Saved?" I enjoy reading the woman's point of view. You read the story and you think, how could she be married to this man? Then you read his point of view and now you understand where he's coming from. I mean, he doesn't exactly have Miss Perfect either. And somewhere in the middle lies the truth, when it's the counselor's turn to step in. Most of you right now are seeing your point of view. It's a female's point of view. By the time you finish this course, you are going to see both a male and a female point of view. And believe me when I tell you it's 180 degrees different. Many of you go to the office the next day and share what happened the night before, the argument you had with your partner, and all of the women take your side and say what a jerk he is. I don't know how you could be with him. Boy, does he know how lucky he is to have you, because they're seeing a female point of view. By the time you finish this class, you will see your point of view and a male's point of view and be able to look at things in a much more objective way. There are always two ways of looking at everything, and there's always a good and a bad side to everyone and everything. There is a plus and then the minus. I remember having a collie for a pet. He was the most lovable animal in the whole world. He could do all sorts of tricks, and he protected the house, yet he had to be fed, let out a few times a day, and on vacations, he had to be looked after. Whatever you have a relationship with, it has a good and a bad side. Maybe you have a beautiful, luxurious car, yet it gets terrible gas mileage. You may have a brand new baby who is the most fantastic thing that has ever happened in your life, yet you are physically exhausted. And if you take the time to think about every relationship you have, you will find that there is a good and a bad side to it. There isn't anything in your life that you are related to that is all good or all bad. Now we accept what's outside of our relationship. For example, I just got a job, yet I have to stand on my feet all day. Would you go to the employer and tell them that, or do you accept it about the job? Here's a statement made from somebody who works with horses. This is what he wrote. On weekends and last summer, I worked with a magnificent thoroughbred at a racetrack. Even these great beauties muck up their stalls. My admiration and love for these horses were totally separate from their sweat and muck. I've been bitten and kicked by them, and all of these unpleasant things were in addition to my love for these horses. Being bitten by a horse is a nuisance, yet has nothing to do with the magnificence of the animal. Can you imagine how ridiculous the owner would be to say, "Horse, I'm going to give you 3 chances not to muck up your stall, and on the 3rd time, I'm going to sell you and get another horse, a better one that's housebroken." A housebroken horse doesn't exist, and neither does a perfectly trouble-free relationship. As a person would have to be insane to keep changing pets, complaining, and withdrawing love from them because of the mess they make. So too, it is insane not to expect upsets and messes in a relationship. It is supposed to have nothing to do with your love for the person. This is a very fast-paced, disposable society. We dine out in fast food restaurants, we eat on paper plates, use paper cups, plastic forks and knives, and throw them all away. I truly believe that a lot of people treat their relationship in the same way. Now, that's not to say that there are some relationships that needs to be discarded. Yet my feeling is that most people throw away a relationship far too early. And I have the proof of the pudding, usually in the comments I receive saying, "Ernie, if I had this program earlier, I never would have gotten divorced." I want you to think about the fact that most people feel there isn't supposed to be any conflict. And once there's a lot of conflict in the relationship, they think they ought to split up and it's not going to work anymore. Many years ago, I watched a lecture on Western families given by a brilliant and famous psychiatrist, Dr. Bruno Bettelheim. At the time, he was in his 90s and a member of Who's Who in America. Somebody in the audience asked, "What do you think the biggest problem with Western families today is?" Do you know what his answer was? The biggest problem with Western families today is we really think there isn't supposed to be no problems. He's right. We really believe there's supposed to be no conflict. You show me a couple where there's no conflict and there's no arguing, and I'll show you a couple that hasn't got a chance of making it. I've always said, if 2 people agree on everything, then one is not necessary in the relationship. You must have conflict. Yet, how you view conflict is the important thing. If you understand that conflict leads to growth, then you won't be so frightened by it. Whenever there's conflict, you can be sure there is a tremendous amount of growth that is about to occur. I want you to understand that relationships must have conflict. How many times do you wake up and you hate yourself? Forget about somebody else. If you could choose not to be with yourself, you'd probably do that. So how could you not have conflict with another person when there are so many times you have conflict within yourself? One of my sister's biggest conflicts that she experienced was with her daughter 1 year prior to her going to university. She had chosen Charles Sturt University some few hundred kilometers away from home. My sister had always gotten along with my niece, and she was such an easy child to raise. Well, all of a sudden, a year prior to her going away to university, if my sister said black, she said white. No matter what she said, there was an argument, and it got to the point that when my niece was getting ready to leave, a few hundred kilometers seemed too close. Maybe Europe would be a better choice. Yet, my sister understands now that her daughter needed to distance herself from her in order to have the courage to leave. It is also true of couples. When they're going through a tremendous amount of conflict, they're usually going through a growth period. One of the things that I think is so important is the belief system that you have when you enter a relationship. If you believe that there is supposed to be no conflict, no arguments, no fights, well, then once it happens, you think we're falling apart. We're not going to make it. I think people are better off to start out with the knowledge that life is not fair. You see, if everybody started out with that premise that life isn't fair, if that's what you were taught, then everything else makes sense. Then every time something bad happened, you'd say, well, geez, that makes sense because life's not fair. Yet the problem is we start out thinking life is fair, and so for the rest of our lives, nothing makes sense. It's the same with the relationship. We really do believe that when we are madly in love, there's supposed to be no conflict. And if there is conflict, it's time to break up. Well, what I'm saying is there has to be conflict. So it's how you view your relationship that matters, not what's going on in the relationship. Remember, I said that there were two ways of looking at everything. Have you ever met somebody who everybody thinks is a snob, very uppity? Do you know what she really turns out to be? What she winds up being is shy. Very few adults think that highly of themselves. Most of the time, a person who can't look you straight in the eye is simply too shy. Yet everybody assumes that she is so conceited, she's so self-centered, and she doesn't care about anybody else, when the truth is that she is simply very, very shy. And so there are two ways of looking at everything, and I want you to recognize that the same applies to the man in your life. Maybe you have what you consider to be an obnoxious man. Well, this is often the sign of a high-caliber man who is not appreciated, not accepted, not given his freedom, or in some way mistreated by his partner. A man who is moody and discouraged. This often is a man who has extremely high aspirations that have not been met. A man who is resentful, negligent, and thoughtless. This is often a man who has great mental capacity and is using his mind for a greater purpose than the details that are important to you. I have a friend who lives near Sydney, and the man is a genius. He is so intelligent, yet at the same time, he forgets where he puts his car and house keys and spends half an hour looking for them before leaving his house. So on one hand, we have this brilliance, and on the other, we have someone who appears to be so absent-minded. He would come close to being like a crazy professor. A man who appears to be lazy and negligent at home may very well be a man who's putting all his energy towards making his life away from home a success and becoming a good provider. Many times, you have a man that earns an exceptional income, and he's exhausted at the end of the day. So he comes home and he sits in front of the television and he winds up falling asleep because all day long he has put so much energy towards making a living. On the other hand, there are women who are so envious of their neighbor, whose partner is always coming home early, always has time to play with his children, do yard and home repairs. And what you find, because I had a neighbor like this, is that the car was repossessed and his home went into bankruptcy because he isn't earning a living. So he comes home with all this boundless energy, where sometimes the man who is a really good provider and is able to earn a good living comes home exhausted. All I want you to understand is that there are two sides to every story. Let's take a look at love now. Love needs to always be unconditional. At first, this is so natural. When a young girl brings home her boyfriend and the parents try to point out the young man's faults, she only sees the good in him. And if she does know his faults, she overlooks them. We've all heard the phrase, love is blind. Later, as the years pass, you start to look at his faults. I love you becomes I'll love you if. We start using the word if, and let me tell you that the if word will do more to destroy your love than any other word, I know. And by the way, women do this with their children. There isn't a mother alive that doesn't give this unqualified, unconditional love to her baby. You ask nothing in return. As the children get older, it's I'll love you if you get good grades, I'll love you if you make me proud, I'll love you if you obey the rules. With the men in our lives, it's the same thing. I love you if you earn a certain amount of income. I'll love you if you stop watching the football game. I'll love you if you start working around the house. Our love starts to have conditions attached to it. Now, as a society, we truly believe that if I punish a person long enough, if I correct them long enough, if I criticize them long enough, I'm going to stimulate them to grow. I'm here to tell you that the only thing that is ever going to make a person grow, to become a better person, is if they know that they are loved for who they are, not what you want them to be. I know most of us don't want to be taken for granted, yet when it comes to real love, you need to be saying, I want you to take me and my love for granted. I love you no matter what. I love you because you're part of my life. I love you because you're mine. This message is so important. And a lot of you don't even know how many times in your life you've been tested. You probably don't even know how many times you've been asked to confirm your love. Do you know how many children will say, what happens if I fail this test? Do you know what the parents' usual reaction is? What are you talking about if you fail the test? If you study, you're going to pass. You know, you put in the time and you put in the hours and you're going to get the result. That's how that works, cause and effect. Do you know how many times a man says, what happens if I get a promotion and we have to move to Melbourne? And I'm not picking on Melbourne. It could be any city. And the woman says, what are you talking about? If we have to move to Melbourne, you mean if you have to move to Melbourne. I've been living next to Mary for 27 years and I'm not about to change that. What the child wanted to hear was, when he was asking about failing, was nothing is going to happen. I'm going to love you no matter what. I want you to do well. I want you to study, yet nothing's going to happen. What that man wants to hear is, I would love you if we lived in a tent on a desert island. It doesn't matter where we live. What matters is I love you and that we're together. Some of you are really attached to sticks, bricks, stones, and locations. I want to detach you from that and get you attached to people. Because believe me, that's what really matters. And again, going back to children, I want to give you an example. The year prior to my sister's daughter leaving for Wagga Wagga to go to university, she asked her mum, Mum, what happens if I made the wrong decision? She was great in answering, nothing will happen. If you made the wrong decision, you'll come back, you'll turn around, and you'll make another decision. We'll turn around and oops, never mind, we made the wrong decision. We'll change decisions. Now I want to give you another example. We have a good friend whose son asked the same question. Do you know what his parents' reaction was? What are you talking about if you made the wrong decision? We just sent in your HEX fees, and we've taken 6 months to make that decision. What do you mean if it's the wrong decision? You made your bed. You're going to lie in it. You're going to go to university for 3 years. Now, do you understand that? My niece has a return ticket, and the other boy had a one-way ticket. Hey there, everyone. We're halfway through our training module, and it's time for a quick intermission. This is a great opportunity to stretch your legs, grab a snack, or take a deep breath and let everything we've covered so far sink in. Remember, staying refreshed is key to retaining what you've learned. In just a few minutes, we'll dive back in and explore more exciting content that will enhance your skills and knowledge. So take a moment for yourself. We'll be back in 7 minutes, right here. Enjoy this break, and we'll see you soon. The teenage suicide rate is at an all-time high, and I want you to know who's committing suicide. It isn't your high school dropouts, it isn't the kids on drugs. Do you know who's killing themselves? It's the straight-A student. He was the captain of the football team. She was head of the Girl Guides. When these kids end their life, everybody is in shock. It's too hard to believe because everybody thinks that these kids had everything going for them. Well, the fact is that kids that finally end their lives literally are producers. They are compulsive pleasers, and they really believe that if I stop producing, that if I stop giving, that if I stop making everybody so proud of me, their love is going to go away. And if you really believe that somebody doesn't love you for who you are, yet they always love you for what they imagine you to be, eventually life becomes too tough and isn't worth living. You have to be really sure that the people that you love know there are no strings to your love. There's no conditions, there's no price tag. It's a gift that I'm giving you freely. I love you because you're you, and because you've come into my life, and because you're mine. I can't emphasize enough how important this message is. One of the books that I always recommend, and you can usually find it in a children's bookstore, is called The Way Mothers Are by Miriam Schlein. It's a simple story of a little baby kitty sitting in front of the mummy kitty asking, "How could you love me when I'm naughty sometimes all day long? When I grab things from my sister? When I'm screaming? If I'm not doing all the things I'm supposed to do?" At the end of the story, the mother says, "I love you because you're my little one, my very own child." And the little kitty says, "Yeah, that's so simple." And the mummy kitty says, "It is simple. That's the way mothers are. I love you because you're mine." Now, this usually becomes a child's favorite book. Anybody out there that has a 2, 3, or 4-year-old, when you read this book, your child will say over and over in different words, "Mummy, could you read me that book again?" About that baby kitty, that no matter what it does, the mummy kitty loves it. You don't need a book to tell your children how much you love them. I've had mothers read or say this to their children who are in drug rehabilitation programs. I want you to understand when the parents tell their children, "I love you because you're mine," that the child sits there and starts crying. This is a message I know that needs to be heard, and you'll get a chance to do that in your homework assignment. Now, it isn't easy to love somebody unconditionally. I also want you to know that you don't need 10 people in your life who love you unconditionally. In fact, it's very hard to have 10 people in your life who love you this way. I hope everyone listening has someone that you can make a phone call to that loves you no matter what. Loves you if you have makeup on or you don't. Loves you if you make $1 million or you don't. If you're married or you're not married, have children or if you don't have children, you know that you can make that one phone call to that person and they would love you no matter what. Then you know what unconditional love is. If you don't, you're a really good candidate for suicide. So I want you to think about the kind of love that you are giving to the people in your life. Does it have a lot of conditions attached to it? I know some of you are thinking, well, how do I love somebody unconditionally when there's so many faults with this person? At this point, if you're not in a relationship, think about a past relationship so that you can learn from past mistakes. Socrates said, "A life that's not examined is not worth living." If you aren't willing to learn from the past, then history is going to keep repeating itself over and over. Once you learn from your mistakes, then there'll be room for somebody new and wonderful to come into your life. We have to begin to realize that every human being alive has 10 faults and 10 virtues. I'm picking the number 10. We could pick 20 or 30. There is nobody alive walking around with only virtues. Every one of us has 10 wonderful things about us, strengths that we possess. And then we have 10 faults or things that we could use a lot of improvement. And so, what I want you to also understand is that the faults that you assign to the man in your life are very subjective. Because if I had a list going around and every one of you wrote down what upsets you about the man in your life, it would be from your point of view. In other words, one of you might put down, "The man in my life has too much ambition." Another one of you would say, "Well, the man in my life doesn't have enough ambition." Somebody else would say, "He's too talkative. He's always monopolizing the conversation." And somebody else would say, "Well, the thing I can't stand about my partner is he never opens his mouth. He never joins in any conversations." One of you might say he spends too much time with the children. Another person might say, "My gosh, he never spends any time with the children." I had one woman in my class who said, "I am married to a Neanderthal man. Every single night after the 11 o'clock news, he shuts the television off, turns around, looks at me, and says, 'You want to do it?'" Now another woman in my class raised her hand and said, "Do you know what I would give for that Neanderthal man?" So the fact is, what one person perceives as a fault, the other looks at as a virtue, and it's really very, very subjective. There's no point in trading the man in your life now because the worst that you can ever do in this lifetime is to take the man that you have now and trade him for a new man who has a different set of 10 faults and 10 virtues. You're never going to get a man who walks into your life with only virtues. I know the first time you meet somebody and probably the first few months that you're in a relationship, you might say, I've got my knight in shining armor. He is perfection. I will guarantee you that after being with this man for 1 year, all of a sudden you'll say, now, that's strange. There's a fault that I've never noticed before. Isn't that annoying, that little habit he has? Next year, oh my gosh, there's another fault that I never noticed before. And I will guarantee you that after the 5-year mark, there is a human being standing in front of you that will have 10 faults and 10 virtues. Now, maybe this new man in your life is the most sensitive, caring, loving man you have ever met, and the men in your past relationships had no sensitivity. Now, because your new man is so sensitive, he has a million friends, and they're always calling him up and monopolizing his time. And he never has very much time for you. Or because he's so sensitive, he might have a mum who's very ill, and he spends a lot of energy, a lot of time, and a lot of money trying to find a cure for her. And maybe the new man in your life is terrific, yet he has got a 14-year-old daughter that is driving you up the wall. And the man prior to this man didn't have that problem. So I don't know what the new problems are, yet I do know that the worst you can ever possibly do is to trade the man in your life now for a new man with a new set of problems. Let me read you something from a counselor's files. It says, Alice T., a newly appointed history professor at a university, decided to leave her husband of 14 years. She moved to another town with her 12-year-old daughter, Pam, and her Siamese cat. Her husband, Mac, a salesman by profession, begged her to stay. When he insisted, they were good friends and they had great sex together. She said this was true, yet they were intellectually incompatible. She wanted somebody who shares her sensitivities to life, and frankly, somebody who didn't embarrass her around her friends as often as he did with his behavior. Mac was crushed when Alice eventually divorced him. Several years later, Alice found a much more compatible man, somebody who also taught at the university. At first, she was extremely happy with her new man, Tom. Then the doubts arose. For one thing, Tom was much less interested in sex, and at times was impotent. Also, he demanded more exclusive time with her than Mac had, and she liked her social life with others. All this made her doubt whether she had made the right decision in leaving Mac. Emotionally, she liked Mac more than Tom, yet still felt drawn to Tom because of their similar interests. Eventually, she learns to face the fact that there are irreconcilable differences with any partner one chooses. And isn't that interesting? That's grounds for divorce in this country, isn't it? Irreconcilable differences. A little later when we talk about how opposites attract, you're going to realize that since we're always attracted to the opposite of whatever our temperament is, how could there not be irreconcilable differences? My wife and I will never, in this lifetime, see eye to eye on a few different things. We will always have irreconcilable differences. Women often develop a self-righteous attitude, and in order to accept a person at face value, you have to really love them for who they are and not for what you want them to be. We really have to look at ourselves first. The reason I want you to do this is because everything stems from the way we view ourselves. If you happen to be harsh and critical about yourself, well, chances are that's the way you view other people. I really want you to give yourself the same unconditional love that I'm asking you to give your children. If you're not in a relationship, you will be, once you really learn to love yourself. We're going to learn later on in the program that you can't give somebody else what you don't possess yourself. I want you, when you get a chance, to think about 10 qualities that you have that could stand a little improvement. Now that's usually the easy part, since most of us tend to be critical of ourselves. Now here's the hard part. Think about 10 wonderful qualities you have. Try to get a list of 10 faults and 10 strengths. And then I would really like you to begin concentrating on your strengths. I want you to ignore the weaknesses for now. I want you to go deep inside yourself and discover how truly wonderful you are. I want you to say to yourself, sure, I have some faults. Everybody does. Yet in spite of that, I am a terrific person. If you can feel like that about yourself, know that you could feel that way about your partner. Now let's look at a very important principle, and that is the fact that opposites attract. I know you've heard that before, and a lot of people try to argue that it's not true. Yet, I believe in 99% of long-term successful relationships, opposites attract. Now, I'm not talking about your religious beliefs, your political beliefs. I'm talking about your basic temperament. I want you to understand that because we are so different, we're going to have a lot of conflict in relationships. I have found that a spontaneous person, somebody who loves to do things on the spur of the moment, is usually attracted to somebody who is cautious, thorough, and a planner. In other words, if you're the type of person who says, let's go to the Gold Coast this weekend, you probably have a man who says, what are you, crazy? I can't just pick up and go to the Gold Coast on a whim. It's going to take me weeks to prepare for that. If you love people, parties, and get-togethers, I know that you have a man who loves quiet evenings alone with you and despises group functions of any kind. If you are a verbal woman who loves to talk and give detailed blow-by-blow accounts of everything that happens, I know that the love of your life is introverted and shy and can summarize an entire trip in one sentence. I also know that if you are a very relaxed housekeeper and everybody feels comfortable in your house, you are attracted to a neat freak who likes everything in its place and probably runs his fingers over the picture frame to see if it's dusted or cleans behind the refrigerator. Of course, the opposite is true if you're the neat and organized one. I know that you have a man who drops his pants wherever and says, "Relax, it'll be there in the morning. It doesn't need to be picked up now." If you care deeply about how other people feel, you probably have a man who could not care less about what other people think. If you're emotional, your partner is logical. That certainly was the case for me when I married my wife. Do you know how many times she has said, "Oh no, what am I going to do about this?" Can you imagine what she would do if she was married to a man who said, "I don't know, what are we going to do about this?" She probably would have been dead by now. She is a type A personality who is usually tense and anxious. Thank goodness she has a man, like me, who is relaxed and easygoing and always says, "Sweetheart, calm down. This is not the end of the world. We'll take one step at a time and we'll solve this problem." Now, half the time she may want to end my life for being so calm, yet let me tell you what's happened. As a result of several years of marriage, she has become much more logical, sensible, relaxed, and easygoing because of me, and I have become much more sensitive, caring, and emotional than I could have ever become if I had married somebody like myself. I honestly believe that the reason we meet and fall in love with somebody who has our opposite temperament, it is because his strengths are your weaknesses and your strengths are his weaknesses. It's like having a puzzle and that piece that finally fits. If I can teach you to accept, appreciate, and love your differences, then you will relate so differently to your partner. If you can learn to love him for who he is, not what you want him to be, or imagine how he is supposed to be, then love will flourish. As a society, we value an outgoing personality. Most teachers will try to get Johnny or Mary to come out of their shell. They'll actually give a better grade to the children who volunteer to answer questions, more than the child who just sits and listens. Can you imagine if schools emphasized that both children have value? Can you imagine if a teacher got up there and said, "I'm so glad that we have listeners in this room. I'm so glad that we have talkers in this room. I'm so glad that we have children who volunteer to answer. Yet, guess what? If we didn't have these wonderful listeners like Johnny and Mary out there, we wouldn't have anybody to talk to." Do you understand that kids wouldn't feel bad about themselves because they were quiet, because they were introverted or shy? There's nothing wrong with having a particular personality. You don't have more value because you open up and talk, and less value because you're quiet. We're just different. And if we can learn to start appreciating our differences and not attacking people for what we want them to be, and just recognizing and loving them for who they are, then love will grow. For example, I know that if a woman is a verbal person, she's going to be attracted to a non-verbal man, in case you couldn't guess, which is an interesting role reversal. I'm the one that is more verbal in my relationship. Let's just say my wife and I were leaving for a social situation, a party that we were going to. And before we left, my wife said to me, "Ernie, tonight, I don't want you to open your mouth. I don't want you to ask anybody how they met, what their life is like, why they're happy, why they're unhappy. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to sit there with your mouth shut and sit quietly, just listening." Now, does anybody here have any idea of how much an awful time I personally would have? I probably would never in my life go out with her again to a social event. That's about as unfair as a woman saying to a man prior to them leaving the house, "Now, look, tonight, when we go out, I want you to open your mouth. I want you to talk. I want you to have an opinion on something. I don't want you to sit there like a bump on a log." Can you imagine the anxiety that that man has, leaving the house trying to be something he's not? Instead, what I would love for a woman to say is, "Honey, I know how much you despise going to social functions, yet it's so important to me that you are there, just being by my side. It just means so much to me." Now, at least he knows why he's going. He's accompanying her rather than having to change his entire personality so that she can feel comfortable when they're out together. I've even discovered that after teaching for all these years that a morning person is attracted to an evening person. I personally am like Snoopy. I'm allergic to mornings. Every morning when I wake up, I feel like I'm coming out of a coma. Everything I've ever written or created has been at midnight, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I've told my wife that if I ever left her, she would probably find me in Las Vegas, my kind of town. My wife, on the other hand, gets up at 6 a.m. and hums in the shower. I can't even breathe at that hour, let alone hum. Yet the truth is that every once in a while I have gotten up early, especially when we're on vacation and have gone for a walk or have had an early breakfast. I do hear the birds and appreciate the stillness of the morning. She, on the other hand, has come with me to nightclubs where we've danced the night away. Every once in a while, one of us goes out of our way to please the other so that we can spend time together enjoying each other's pleasure. Yet on a routine basis, I don't ask her to stay up with me until 2 o'clock in the morning, and she doesn't poke me at 6 a.m. So two people with different time clocks can live together. I love to tell the story about Brenda, a woman who was an executive vice president in a Fortune 500 company. She wore navy or black three-piece suits, had a PhD, and was a brilliant woman. She was 35 years old and she had never been married. All of a sudden, Brenda had fallen in love. Every single person in that company on Friday was hanging out the window to get a look at the person Brenda had fallen in love with so you could get a picture of him. He looked like he was a Hell's Angel. He would drive up on his Harley Davidson with shoulder-length hair, and off on the back of his motorcycle rode this executive in her three-piece suit as they rode away into the sunset. Everybody thought she was crazy. They said she obviously was lonely and she didn't have anybody in her life, and so she was settling for this wild man. I was the only one saying she wasn't crazy. Brenda needed this type of man in her life because she was a logical, goal-oriented, ambitious person who needed somebody to make her stop and smell the roses. He was teaching her how to live one day at a time and not take life so seriously. He was spontaneous, unconventional, romantic, and loves life. She, on the other hand, would provide him with the stability and the structure that he had been missing. Each came into the other's life to bring about a balance. There was a lawyer who took my class, and talk about a perfectionist. His wife took the class first, and luckily he wound up taking the men's class. Yet, she shared that he was a perfectionist, and every single day, he would put her on a scale. If she gained 1 kilogram, he wouldn't make love to her until she lost that weight. He enrolled her in gourmet cooking classes, interior design classes, aerobics classes, and every other kind of class that you could imagine. He felt that she had to be the perfect lawyer's wife. She told me that she used to be a vicious, bubbly, happy-go-lucky, spur-of-the-moment kind of person. In fact, in high school, she was a girl guide. It was obvious to me that little by little, he was getting rid of everything that she stood for, and every reason that he had fallen in love with her in the beginning. And so here was this depressed person who was losing all self-esteem, losing all sense of herself. What I finally told this man was, do you understand that you fell in love with her because of the traits that she possessed? Now, if you start to whittle away all those wonderful qualities that are the opposite of what you possess, what you're going to be left with is an empty shell. When you fell in love, you complemented one another. You couldn't be with somebody who was so serious, goal-oriented, and a perfectionist like yourself. You need to be with someone exactly like your wife. Then I told her, guess what happens when he molds you into the perfect wife and you become a carbon copy of him? He's going to get rid of you and go out and find somebody else he can mold. So you might as well keep who you really are and keep your own valuable, unique self. Thank goodness they both listened to me, and last I heard, they were once again madly in love with each other. We're all so different, and everybody has value. I want you to look at the good side of everyone. Now let's go back to the man in your life. Can you remember how you felt when you first met that wonderful man? You probably told everybody how wonderful he was. You only saw the positive side. I used to show a list to the women in my class. On the left side was the trait we saw when we first met this glorious man. And on the right side, I'd show how we view the same trait years after we're in the relationship. Perhaps you loved him because he was confident. Well, now you see him as conceited. I put soft-spoken. That's what you fell in love with. Now you see him as timid and weak. He was mellow and calming, and now he's passive and boring. He was affectionate, now he's oversexed. He was athletic, now he's a sports fanatic. Maybe you were attracted to him because he was a sophisticated traveler. Now he's a compulsive nomad. He may have been ambitious, and now he's money hungry. He was outgoing, now he's a loudmouth. He went from being opinionated to a know-it-all. Now, what's interesting about this is, let's say you finally get rid of this man in your life because all you see is the right side. He's a know-it-all, conceited, boring, and all the other negative traits you see. Now he meets a new woman. Now, what's interesting about this is, what do you think she's going to see in this man? She's going to see the left side, all the wonderful qualities. He hasn't changed at all. She just sees what you used to see. Now, let me tell you the differences between men and women and why they fall in love. Do you know women fall in love with the capacity to give, to nurture, to care for, to love? Do you know why men fall in love with women? Because of how they feel about themselves when they are with you. Boy, is this really important to remember. They fall in love because of the way they feel about themselves when they are with you. For instance, if you ask my wife why she fell in love with me, she'll tell you how much she used to laugh at my jokes. I thought he was the funniest man alive. Truth is, she still laughs at my jokes. That's one of the reasons I fell in love with her, because I felt so good. In effect, at an unconscious level, I want you to know most men, if they could verbalize it, this is what they are saying. I have so many weaknesses and so many faults, yet you know what? When I'm with this woman, I feel like I am a king. It's like I almost can't do anything wrong, and I love the way this feels. I want to feel like this forever, and I want to spend the rest of my life with this woman. So if you have been proposed to or are married, I know you are a woman who has made this man feel really good.
We've just completed the first half of Lesson 1 of Awaken His Passion, and this is only the beginning. The version you watched here is slightly longer due to the addition of my introduction, conclusion, and intermission. Typically, each session lasts 60 to 90 minutes and is divided into 2 parts to enhance understanding and retention. Before we wrap up, I want to share a couple of quick announcements. First, please join us tomorrow at the same time for the second half of this lesson. Attending will ensure you gain the full benefits, including the assignment at the end, to help you put into practice what you've learned. Additionally, we will be introducing some additional and exciting bonuses. As a token of appreciation for your commitment, we're offering you a free bonus valued at $95. Bi-weekly emails from Everlast Therapies featuring relationship improvement tips. These will arrive in your inbox every Wednesday and Sunday. To subscribe, simply click on any of the program links in the description box and scroll down a bit. You'll find the subscription section there. Both Ernie and I understand that many people dislike signing up for things due to the influx of unwanted emails and marketing materials. Ernie shared his frustration about receiving 5 emails from a company just minutes after purchasing a program. Nothing is more annoying. That's why Everlast Therapies guarantees you'll only receive the emails you've signed up for, with perhaps the occasional major announcement. We genuinely respect your concerns and strive to keep your inbox clutter-free. In summary, we're just getting started. Make sure to join us for the second half of Lesson 1 tomorrow at the same time. And remember to subscribe to your free relationship tips valued at $95. If you have any questions or comments, please jot them down below and we'll address them as soon as possible. And know that after this event ends, it gets uploaded here. So if you need or want to, for whatever reason, you can easily revisit the video at your own leisure. Also, feel free to share this with anyone you know who may be facing challenges in their relationship. Your support could make a significant difference in helping them navigate their difficulties and strengthen their bond. Until tomorrow, take care, and we'll see you here.